All day, all night. The music never stops. MTV Music Television.
Yeah. Here, I'll give you $100 and I'll take out the Benihana's if you slide that 75-foot handrail.
You know, Crosby, no Stills, no Nash. No bald guys, no fat guys, no fat bald guys, no rock stars who look like history professors, okay? R.E.M., no. Marky Mark, no. P.M. Dunn, no.
Just fluffy white clouds.
Young adults are violent, right?
Welcome back. Sorry I've been gone a while. You know what else has been gone a while but is making a comeback? That's right, it's the thing that the video is very, very clearly about. What a redundant fucking question. Today's video is, I hope, going to be something a little bit special because I am going to be talking about something very near and dear to my personal history. Jackass. After 10 years, a new Jackass film is coming out this October, Jackass Forever, going with the same numbering pun as the Shrek films, I see. Now I'll talk about that a little bit later, but more importantly, I want to talk about why the franchise left such an impact on me. See, Jackass came under a lot of fire during its time and was simply written off as reckless, dangerous, or immature by a lot of its detractors. But I can actually list a good handful of positive life lessons that I took away from the show. So today I want to catch everyone up on the franchise and talk about why I, and potentially you, might owe Jackass a lot more respect than we might think. So if we're going to watch some Jackass, we need to get hold of it. So what you're going to do is grab hold of your CD case. This is the CD case that you all have, and I know we all have this because this is how we store all our media. Because it's 2002 and we store all media on CDs that we listen to through our plug-in stereos, and we're going to find the CD or the DVD that we have Jackass on, which we got by illegally downloading it from LimeWire, and then we burnt it onto a CD. We burnt that shit onto our CDs using Windows Media Player. The show first aired on MTV back in the year 2000. See, before MTV was the home of absolutely shite reality television and regurgitated BuzzFeed politics, it was a landmark of experimentation that, as well as providing a platform for varied and alternate music tastes, also had some great programming that explored the apathy and anarchy that formed 90s youth culture. It was the home of backwards caps, bright cartoons with sarcastic humour, punk rock, skateboards, and that sweet, sweet fisheye lens. Imagine if the Saved by the Bell intro threw up onto a copy of Thrasher magazine. Its content provided commentary on individual and social cultural issues of the real world wrapped in zany unreality, with shows like Daria, Beavis and Butthead, and South Park. Over time, MTV would shift focus to reality TV, but this change was gradual. Its early reality shows gave us larger-than-life premises and people. They sought to have a gimmick that supported the personality that viewers had come to expect of MTV. Jackass balanced perfectly on this line of ludicrous and real with what were essentially adult Looney Tunes characters acting out in public, performing stunts where they would hurt themselves, confound the public, or just do generally crazy, gross and painful shit, all through the chaotic yet nostalgic eye of guerrilla on-the-street videography. There was a sincerity to it. It wasn't smart, and it sure as hell wasn't safe, but it was real. Despite the situations being quite ludicrous, the people themselves seemed really authentic, which is more than you can say for most reality shows nowadays. The cast mostly came from different backgrounds, with a good handful of them doing work on a skating and feature magazine, Big Brother. It was the magazine's editor, Jeff Tremaine, who brought all these separate people together. As the show's producer, Jeff is arguably the most important person in the Jackass crew, bringing this whole thing to life, and he seems like such a cool and involved, friendly guy. But excluding behind the camera crew, Jackass is mostly recognised for its cast of 9 on-screen performers.
Hi, I'm Johnny Knoxville. Welcome to Jackass.
Johnny Knoxville is primarily considered to be the face of Jackass. The dude's fucking nuts. I think the perfect moment to sum him up is in the second movie on a stunt called the Toro Totter, a 4-man seesaw where 4 of the guys have to help each other stay out of the way of a charging bull. Even when everyone else has bailed and ran out of the gate with fear in their eyes, even when he's the only one left in the middle and the bull's obviously gonna come for him, he just stays there and taunts it. And he's wearing a red fucking shirt.
He's amazing.
I always thought of Pontius as the clown of the group. His stunts were always less about pain or gross out stuff and more just dumb fun and pranking people. Who could forget his alter ego, Party Boy, and his sick Party Boy banger? Just from his behaviour and his jokes, he had a real sense of comfortability on camera. Some of these guys were just good at taking hits, but Chris Pontius is a natural born entertainer.
A lot of doctors, dentists, I don't really consider them real doctors. They think they're God, you know? Not me. Satan.
Steve-O was what I always thought of as the gross one, and I mean especially gross, even for Jackass standards. I always remember him putting that leech on his eye and bungee jumping in a porta potty full of dog shit.
You absolute leech!
Alongside the success of Jackass, Steve-O and Pontius made another show called Wild Boys, which was a sort of travel and animal-oriented version of Jackass. Steve-O has become probably the most popular Jackass alum lately. He's done a lot of public stunts, gone on podcasts, and really grown his own career in recent years. Dave England did a lot of things with poop. He was the poop guy. I think his character-defining moment is in the second movie where he just straight up eats a chunk of horse shit. Dave England always struck me as the nice guy in the group, the one who'd pay for friends' lunches and try and keep everyone's spirits up. And while he wasn't often on the front line for many pain-related stunts compared to Knoxville or Steve-O, in hindsight he probably had the strongest stomach of the crew. Man Preston often performed stunts together in front of the public, mainly to bolster the absurdity of something like chasing each other down the street. Preston's a very large guy and Man is a little person, and it just looks crazier to the public than if someone like Steve-O and Pontius had done that stuff. They're both pretty strong guys in their own respects. Preston took some of the hardest hits in the whole show, and here's Man holding up Shaquille God-forsaken Neil. Hi there, how you doing? What?
Safety first. Shit.
I will say, if anyone ever seemed like they were being laughed at and not with, it was Ehren. Now that's not to say Ehren wasn't a great cast member, he was. It's just, whenever the guys messed with Ehren, unlike when the Jackass crew messed with each other usually, Ehren never really seemed to take it as well, almost as if he realised he was the butt of the joke.
Oh, fucking with Ehren is the best thing ever. Where's he at right now? I want to pee on him or something.
This persona culminates in probably my favourite stunt of the whole franchise, which I had a very unique experience with, in Terror Taxi. This is a stunt performed in the second Jackass movie where Ehren dresses up as a stereotypical Middle Eastern terrorist and tries to subtly convince a taxi driver that he wants to go to the airport to commit an act of terrorism. But Jackass isn't a political show, guys. It doesn't do punchlines with something to say about the political climate. So much so that out of context, this seems like a super out of place sketch. But worry not, the real joke is that the beard that has been fashioned for Ehren's costume and then glued onto his face is made out of the collective puberties of all the cast and crew, and to make sure no innocent bystander is in any actual danger of being pushed to fear and confusion, something important we'll talk about a little bit later by the way, the taxi driver is a hired actor, informed to take the stunt too far and kidnap Ehren at gunpoint without his knowing. But, fun fact, on first viewing of this film, I went to the toilet during the setup for this stunt, and I too missed the part where they explain that the taxi driver is a fake actor. So, like Ehren, for most of this stunt, I, for real, thought he was being really kidnapped. And let me tell you, it added a whole other level of emotion to the fucking thing. Despite being seen as kind of the pathetic one, That's only in terms of a Jackass environment. He still earned his place. He lost teeth, he broke bones, he shed blood.
Safety first.
Jesus, I thought we were gonna finally get rid of him.
I want you to punch me in the face 1 second prior to takeoff.
Bam is actually quite a prolific dude and had probably the most expansive career during the run of Jackass, including his own reality TV spin-off series, Viva La Bam. He was also a pro skateboarder, he had his own band, made films, did radio. It's actually quite impressive. Bam and Ryan came into the show as a package deal. They were a duo, best friends who knew each other before the show, growing up and producing skating and music videos together. Bam's probably the guy I identified the most with growing up. His and Ryan's friendship was reflective of me and my own best friend at the time, who coincidentally reminded me a lot of Ryan. Bam struck me as this explosive, wide-eyed creative, and Ryan seemed to be this happy-go-lucky social butterfly who acted first and thought later in the interest of putting a smile on people's faces. At least that's how I always pictured it. We can't talk about the Jackass guys without talking about the fact that Ryan Dunn died in a car accident in 2011. While it's true that Dunn died due to high-speed drunk driving, which I don't condone at all, that doesn't change the fact that from testimony of friends and public fans who'd met him, Ryan Dunn came off as a really cool, honest and accepting guy with good morals, and his death was a tragedy. I don't want to harp on this point too much, but obviously Jackass has always been a target of criticism and controversy for its dangerous nature, which often culminated in many lies and rumours from people desperate to demonise the show in an effort to steer kids away from imitating it. Fearmongering is absolutely the best way to do this. Educating a child on their level is a ridiculous concept, and it shows that you will not only earn the respect of your kid, but also earn the respect of the people around you by using bias hyperbole like this. Anyway, my point is that nobody during the run of Jackass died during one of their stunts, despite many circulating rumours, and the death of Ryan Dunn was completely unrelated to any filming going on. It isn't proof of the show's negative influence, it was a total accidental tragedy. To end this on a positive, I don't think a lot of people know this, but Ryan Dunn did actually have his own reality TV series for a bit, Homewreckers, which is a little bit like Pimp My Ride, except instead of fixing someone's car, he gigafucks someone's house. And it's also the most 2000s MTV thing you will ever see.
We're gonna rip this room apart. We're going to replace his bed with a stage, put a bar where his dresser was, and shove a dumpster in his closet.
Hello, I'm Johnny Knoxville. Welcome to Jackass.
There were other shows that came along that were obviously inspired by the series format, shows like The Dudesons and Dirty Sanchez. But Jackass was always king, enough to transition from a TV show into a film series, from 2002 all the way to 2011. Jackass 1 to 3 and then 0.5s of each film, which were comprised of deleted footage and crew interviews. I believe they're still all on Netflix, at least at the time of upload. The first movie is effectively like a longer episode of the TV show with a somewhat bigger budget. There's really no way to screw up the movie version of a format like this, but it's still nice when the film version of a TV show really just feels like a larger episode of the show itself, where they can get away with more stuff. The second movie is peak Jackass, and it's my favourite addition in the whole franchise. It highlights everyone to the absolute extreme. It's where Dave does the biggest bunch of shit-related dares. It's where Steve-O does the grossest shit. Where Ryan and Bam do the craziest shit you'd only do with a best friend. And where Knoxville shows everyone just how much of a total fucking psychopath he really is. Half the stunts that Knoxville does in this film, the rest of the cast are like freaking out or covering their eyes or just not enjoying it at all while he's laughing his ass off.
Yeah, fuck that, fucking Christ. That is great.
The riot control test, I think, is the most hardcore thing they've ever done in the history of Jackass, simply based off reaction alone. The fact that nobody wants to do it and nobody's laughing afterwards.
Are you insane? No, all you gotta do is stand there. Yeah, get killed. Look at that thing. That thing blew
It's just
the hell
loud.
out.
It's loud. It's going to hurt really bad, but it's just loud.
You're nuts.
No.
The The third movie was made 4 years after the second and feels something like a reunion. The budget and the success of its stars is definitely noticeable here. They're able to travel more and hire huge set pieces like a fighter jet, where they're throwing items like tomatoes and scrap cardboard into the path of its engine, trying to hit Ehren with them. And then they just start throwing actual dangerous shit like shoes at him. It reminds me of that Mr. Bean sketch where he's trying to hit a guy with wet sponges at a fair game, and then he runs out of wet sponges, so he just starts using bean tins and chairs and really dangerous shit. The sense of camaraderie and friends just having a dick about is in full force here, more than in anything else they've done. At this point, these guys have all been best buddies for about 10 years, and it really comes through. And that's ultimately what made Jackass special. See, while out-of-touch adults and surface-level observers were labelling the show as a needless display of violence or an immature and dangerous influence on kids, I, as one of those kids, never took away any of that. Even back then, I looked below the surface, at the positives that I could take away from it, at the lessons that I needed to hear. The show taught me 3 major lessons, and one of them is something that was ingrained into me on a very individual and personal level. One of them is something that I think applies to anyone who is creative, especially aspiring filmmakers and video makers. And one of them is a lesson that I think everyone can afford to learn or take away with them. And I'll label these philosophies as such. The first lesson I really took away from Jackass was something that applies to not only myself, but hopefully those of you out there who are creators. And that is to draw a sense of drive and inspiration from the smallest things, no matter your situation. I remember being young and having this home video camera, and me and my friend would make these stupid little stop motion animations on it with like full-on stories, using toys that we got out of McDonald's Happy Meals. I never thought for a second that those silly little home movies were ever good enough to be seen by anyone. I thought only big budget films or well-developed ideas were ever good enough to be shown in cinemas or on TV, and that you had to be incredibly rich, skilled, professional, mature, good-looking and living in Hollywood to ever have people make or see your stuff. Then comes this show with a group of guys that have no tact, look like they live in a barn with a dirty, shaky camera, and somehow it's on TV. This kind of thing was a first for me. Never could I have dreamed that in the not so distant future, all us normies would have the opportunity to film fun shit with friends in the same way, and also grow an audience and make a livelihood off it. Jackass is mainly thought of as a prank show, and it wasn't too long ago that the idea of prank entertainment was revitalised online. It's actually kind of sad to see the format become more abused lately. I mean, when you look back at on-the-street prank shows like Jackass or Trigger Happy TV and the likes, they were definitely disruptive and they pushed boundaries, but they were never mean-spirited.
Are you serious?
It was a prank. It was a prank.
You do this,
It was a prank.
Do you know
It was
me?
a prank. It was a
I don't give a fuck, man. Why you do this to me?
It was a prank, man.
The kind of pranks involving members of the public that you'll see if you watch Jackass are situations where the public's participation is purely observational. The impact of the prank is basically that the people seeing it go home and say, "Hey honey, I saw the craziest thing today." What they never were was the performers going up to people and making them fear for their lives.
Get your money! It's a prank! It's a prank! It's a prank! Oh!
Touching them and invading their personal space. Expressing or implying racist slurs.
You just can't be saying the word nigga like that, bro. Like,
Yeah,
what are you talking
I'm talking about
bro?
the nickel on the floor.
Or just generally being a bad person to another person.
Get the away from my car. What are you doing? What the is this? You think that's funny? Why? Why did you do that?
Do it for the vine.
Do it for the prank. We love America. They do pranks and people are killing us.
The guys on Jackass never had to rush to tell the people around them that it's just a prank. You know why? Because the people around them were never about to fly off the handle or break down in tears or were put into a state of fear enough to need that reassurance. You know that whole thing of if you have to explain a joke, then it clearly was a pretty shit joke?
Yo, it's a prank, 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 it's a prank. It's not real, it's real. You're filming.
Unfortunately, this is an example of the kinds of unaware, unthoughtful creators that took all the wrong things away from the path of independently driven entertainment that Jackass helped pave. With that said, that path does still exist, and I believe the rise in popularity for more relatable, everyman content came from multiple influences, including Jackass, and did help influence a good amount of young would-be or aspiring creators at the time. Even just watching it gives you a sense that yes, you and your dumb friends are entertaining enough to listen to on a podcast. Yes, your makeshift skateboarding promo video is worth watching. And yes, you can find an audience for your niche little tricks and talents. It might be a stretch, and something like YouTube as a free-to-use widespread video platform was probably bound to happen anyway, but there's a lot that can be taken away on the subject of dumb fun and making entertainment with friends here, because the format of the show doesn't require expensive sets, prepared scripts or talented performers, but still manages to be connective and enjoyable and human. It served as a motivator for small-time people like myself who wanted to entertain, and can still serve as a source of inspiration and know-how for others on how to be yourself, be passionate, and be all the more entertaining for it on whatever platform you choose to broadcast yourself on. Now that we're all able. The second lesson that Jackass helped teach me is one that I've cited many times on this channel: moderation. It's a principle that I think should be employed by and taught to everyone on a global scale, and that's why I've labelled it as many. See, the Jackass guys are the type of boys to see a river of shit and say, yeah, I could jump that. And in real life, don't we so often come across metaphorical rivers of shit? And I'm getting philosophical now. This is the new direction of the channel. Now, is it most often best to turn tail and refuse to even try at all? Or to push the visceral conceptual image of swallowing a gallon of fecal matter, thus potentially contracting several various strains of diseases and toxins out of the prefrontal cortex to a little place I like to call I ain't trying to hear that shit-topia, and jump into the shit anyway? But the boys weren't without preparation. They had their animal handler on set, they wore helmets when they went for jumps, they got medical clearance before doing a stunt. They were prepared, but they didn't think too hard about unforeseen consequences. And call me wrong, but from the outside looking in, as someone who's often too cautious or overthinking to still go for things I know would probably turn out just fine, I think that's a trait that gets taken for granted. Media tries to teach us this so often, but it's usually unrelatable and pandering. A superhero about to go into the final battle decides to go for the crazy, dangerous plan that only has 1,000,000 to 1 shot of working, but they end up defeating the villain and getting laid, or whatever. They take the risk, but they're better equipped than when they started their journey, and they have a team to help them. The Jackass guys personify this lesson on a very human, everyday level, because they're everyday people. The stakes are breaking bones. The payoff is giving their friends and audience a good laugh. And to them, the payoff is worth more than the stakes, so long as they can ignore how much it might hurt for a little bit. I think we can all afford to learn, while we're growing up, to try to jump across rivers of shit every so often. My point is, if you're gonna do anything that you can get something out of, but you could potentially wind up hurt, it's a valuable skill to balance being prepared enough to avoid extreme repercussions, like death, but try to block out the idea of everything that could go wrong to give you the courage to do it anyway. If ignorance is bliss, you should be ignorant to the fear and the worry that stops you from doing something if the bliss you can get out of it is something that would make you and everyone else happy. If you're gonna be dumb, you sure as hell gotta be tough.
When you get knocked down, I gotta get back up.
Alright, this one's very personal to me. That's why I labelled it as the one. It's very much a little segment about me. I'm opening my heart to you, so you better not fucking laugh. The Jackass guys were in the company of comedy duos and cartoon team-ups to instill in me the principle that almost singularly carried my personal goals throughout the first 20 years of my life. And that principle was friendship. My ultimate takeaway from watching these guys, doing what you love with the people that you love. And I'm going to try and frame this as non-anime power of friendship as I can, so kind of just bear with me here. I didn't want to be rich and I didn't want to be attractive. The only thing I really wanted out of life at that point was to live with and for the people who I felt the most alike and connected to. And for me, that was friends. Every other type of relationship paled in comparison. This was a family that you made from scratch, not based off obligation or reward or conventional structure, but based off mutuality and camaraderie. Most people watch Jackass, and especially for the people who were against it, the big moment of each stunt, the takeaway for them was this moment. The moment where everything goes wrong for the person doing it, where the pain or the shock hits them. But that's not the big moment of each stunt. The big moment is this moment. The moment everyone around them bursts into laughter at what hilarious, crazy thing their friend is doing. It took me so long to make this video that a trailer for the 4th movie came out before I finished this script, and honestly, I'm glad it did, because it confirmed what I was reading into with the whole show. 10 years later, there's no mistaking it. The entire trailer for the 4th movie has a pure, unfiltered focus on friendship, even talking about getting together with old friends. These guys didn't breed ideals of doing reckless, unthoughtful stunts or dismissing anyone's safety in me, but they did breed ideas of empathy and sociability and being able to laugh at yourself. I definitely feel that my personality conflicted with some ideals I saw in these guys, and I wanted to learn those from them, like not taking life too seriously or not trying too hard to avoid pain, but I feel like I'm slowly getting there as these guys continue to inspire and teach me. To get a bit personal for a minute, I don't have any friends at the moment in the same way as I had those friends as a teenager who could tell each other everything and did crazy stuff together, who were all pretty much inspired by the effect of the show. And that was so ingrained into me as a principle that it can be hard to know what to do with oneself sometimes when you don't have anyone to live for and with on such a unified, heartfelt level. But at the same time, I don't regret Jackass teaching me to prioritize virtues like companionship and laughter and raw, unapologetic honesty above things like wealth or intelligence. It's obviously personal bias, but I don't think that living in a mansion or always being the smartest or the most attractive person in a room is ever going to match the emotional purpose that having a group of unconditional companions is going to give. In particular within our group, I had a best friend who was basically the other half of me. We met when we were 6 and were friends all the way up until when we were 21. We not only grew up together, but grew around each other, compensating for each other's flaws while trying to also help each other overcome them. He'd push me to be more social, and I'd try to help him be more creative and find his identity. For this reason, the friendship of Bam and Ryan really connected with us, and it hit quite hard when Ryan Dunn died, especially seeing as this is when our friendship started to die off. But I stand by what I said. People who thought that Jackass was just dumb violence for the sake of dumb violence were missing the point about why they ever did those crazy, dangerous things in the first place. To make other people laugh. They probably missed that from never having watched a single instance of the series at all. What a surprise, people who incorrectly identify a thing have never even tried to experience the thing they're criticizing in their entire lives. Regardless, if you have any friends that you're worried are not giving you as much as you're giving them, or maybe you happen to be quite rich or attractive and you're worried that some of your friends are only around you to take advantage of that, I'd recommend watching Jackass because it'll show you what a real group of friends is supposed to look like. and what they go through together.
Hello, I'm Johnny Knoxville. Welcome to Jackass.
After 10 years, Jackass is back with Jackass Forever, and as I talked about, there's a huge focus on old friends getting back together. Honestly, when I heard they were making another Jackass, it reminded me a lot of the Son of Jackass skit they did at the end of the first movie, where they're all old men and still making Jackass.
Yeah, dude.
But how do I feel about a new Jackass movie? Will it be any good? Should it happen? Honestly, I'm on the fence. On one hand, it's exciting to see all the guys that I grew up with who taught me values come together again, even if it is just the nostalgic kid in me saying that. But on the other hand, there's so much that's different, and the objective adult in me has concerns. It's true that a lifetime of engaging in something will make you better and stronger at it, and these guys have been bashing themselves around for decades, but there's a limit. No matter how resilient a person is, you can only do this stuff up to a certain age. Jackass Forever has been in the news on multiple accounts, and one of them was for how Knoxville and Steve-O wound up in hospital right as filming started. That might be good for the image of the film's crazy nature, but there was also the worry that these guys might just be too old for this kind of crazy shit anymore. Although to be objectively hopeful, the crew were hardly kids when they started Jackass. Knoxville was around 30 and already had a wife and kid when he did his first stunt, and as someone creeping up to 30, my body already feels like a bag of loose nails and glass, so they may just not be human. I don't know, it's difficult to say. My second concern is the environment. As I talked about, Jackass got its start on MTV back when this kind of progressive, destructive youth content was relevant and all over the place. But honestly, MTV isn't even like that anymore, let alone the world. I'm gonna get a bit defeatist here, and honestly, I usually try to keep the negative elements of my worldview out of my videos, but that's because the positive elements of my worldview, I'm sure you can see, rest on the enjoyment of the past and previously learnt principles. I actually have a really overwhelmingly negative outlook on the present environment, and I think that environment nowadays, on a majority scale, is geared towards the exact opposite of everything good that Jackass stood for. People don't want to seem to strive or strain themselves to make art or entertainment as much nowadays, because it seems like less people want to get anything of inner substance out of that entertainment. It's enough to just film a bunch of beautiful people in a mansion/island and film that, or just watch a bunch of filtered egotists stare at themselves in a mirror for 10-second intervals that gets millions of views. And this isn't even big budget corporatization that once had a monopoly on media. This is independent public access free to use media. These are real people. The rich and vain really did win over. And let's be honest here, no matter how many people might say that they prefer honest, personal content, and you might be one of them, this type of entertainment succeeds because it has the most viewership. The majority of people want to see this type of thing. And for the reasons I explained, Jackass isn't this type of thing. Jackass Forever will be a great nostalgia trip for the limited audience that still remembers it fondly, but I don't feel it's going to instill the principles that it taught me as a kid to a new generation that needs to hear it, because I don't think that's the generation we live in anymore. I worry that this just isn't the environment anymore for Jackass. My final concern is something that drew a lot of attention around the production, and that is all the stuff that went down with Bam. For those that don't know, Bam Margera won't be appearing in Jackass Forever. Since the last major Jackass appearance, and especially since the death of Ryan, he's had many personal troubles leading to public meltdowns on social media and some rightfully controversial statements and behaviour that has caused clashes with the production crew. This has been an erratic situation to follow. He's been off production, then sorted it out, then off again. Now, I'm not TMZ, I'm not going to dish on the goss of one man's personal hell. All their details, if you want to find them, are out there. I just think that the whole thing is a really sad state of affairs to see a once lively personality and a decent guy go through so much mental and personal trouble. Thankfully, I feel as though the majority response to Bam's issues has been mostly sympathetic. He's obviously got a lot going on, and Even though a lot of his statements and behaviour has been unkind or uncalled for, I really feel for the guy. You have to remember, and maybe it's easier to perceive if you've had a similar kind of relationship, but when you grow up with someone so integral to who you are, you actually grow up around each other. You become half of a whole, so that when you eventually separate through one way or another, you actually do lose half of yourself. Yeah, no wonder Bam has been acting as though he lost his mind. He did lose half of it. I also don't think it was an easy decision for the rest of the gang to make the film without him. I imagine these guys were just really excited to work with each other again. As hard as it may be to not work as a whole, they were always working with that situation anyway because of Ryan. Still, it's personally really tough that out of all the crew that won't be reappearing, it's the two guys that perfectly personify Jackass for me. Things are just different than they were 10 years ago. Time's a bitch.
God, if you're going to be dumb, you better be tough.
All that being said, I don't want to completely bring down the idea of how exciting it is to see old friends laughing together again. The audience may be smaller, but I feel lucky to be one of the few that has always had Jackass popping up in my life, and a good portion of you who are in the same audience will be the lucky ones too, that get the full force of what Jackass represents when you watch it. This isn't the first time the guys have all gotten together since Jackass 3. I recommend watching them all help Steve-O promote his recent stage show. I'd also recommend watching the MTV tribute to Ryan Dunn that they made after his death. It's really heartfelt and sweet, and still manages to be a good amount of fun watching all these guys goof around and reminisce. If Jackass happens to be new to you and you've got a strong stomach, I recommend going back and watching the series and the films from the beginning. Watching through the franchise start to finish, you can really see that bond that grows throughout, going from this dumb and fun piece of anarchic entertainment and really evolving into something special. Like a wound splitting open that gets pulled back together with stitches. Every time these guys got hurt, it just brought them that much closer together. Hopefully, past all the blood and the bruises, you'll see the smiles and the bonds that I saw, that these guys wanted you to see, and that hopefully we'll see again in Jackass Forever. Hey, thanks for making it to the end of the video. You might remember a food from our childhood called turkey Twizzlers, which recently made a comeback. Well, I made a little video series giving some details about them and just had a generally fun time reminiscing on them. So maybe that'll be up your alley as well. I also tend to do some film reviews and some gameplay videos, so if you want to see all that kind of stuff, feel free to check out my channel. That's pretty much all I have to say. I don't really know how to get out of this little bubble I've put myself in.